Thank you, Vivian. Good morning, everyone, from all these not too cold places that you're showing in the chat, which is interesting to see that you're showing the temperature, which means that something is going on with temperatures, which is not normal. I will introduce the Soteria project, which is the one that it is organizing these climate resilient dialogues as one of our activities. I mean, the project, it tries to find solutions and to be tested through insurance for climate adaptation, because we think that the insurance sector is one of the key players that could address adaptation, which has been an issue that is being left behind of mitigation for so many years, but now we cannot avoid to address adaptation as a whole as well. We have 15 beneficiaries and up to 30 social partners. So the 30 institutions, local authorities, insurance companies are engaged in the project. And it is quite interesting to see that, in particular, the local authorities are very interested in addressing this subject and trying to understand how they can increase the power they may have to address adaptation, because alone they won't be able to do that. So Soteria objectives are three main objectives, but the first one is to access better knowledge, to facilitate the access to better knowledge, data, and digital services, because this can help to enhance climate risk management. In particular, this is very important for the local and regional levels. There are more access at national and European levels, but local and regional are still big gaps in terms of data access and how to facilitate data, which it is supposed to be for free, but it's very difficult to manage. The second objective is, well, understand and see what are the best and emerging practices and test these solutions, including risk transfer that can help those regions and local authorities to handle risk, but in dialogue and co-creation with other stakeholders. And here, insurance sector, cities, regions, and including local farmers, communities, and consumer associations are very important, and in particular those which are directly vulnerable. And with the main aim to also target what are, or understanding better what are the insurance gaps and how they can be filled. And the third objective is basically supporting the enabling environment for that. So meaning the basis for adoption of multi-level polycentric governance approaches that can sort of use all these ingredients and enable them to be synergistic. In that regard, our main target groups are regions and local authorities and networks. And there we want to provide robust and adaptable innovative insurance solutions to increase their resilience. For example, like prototypes to insurance of NBS. Then the insurance sector and finance, where we want to create a reference and co-creation to set up for data, methods, stakeholders engagement, for the insurance sector to build new business cases and offer relevant and affordable climate insurance products. And I think a fundamental, also important factor here is to create trust in between the demand and the offer. Then also key insurable sectors, and there is also to empower insurance companies to develop new risk transfer solutions and to use climate adaptation and MBS. Given that the insurance companies can lead the acceleration to the adaptation of insurable assets. The fourth group is the citizens, vulnerable and disadvantaged groups and NGOs. And here is very important because it is also very important to understand that the solutions should be done and co-created in a way that doesn't create distributional impacts on vulnerable groups. Then mission and associated projects of the DG RTD and the mission on adaptation, where we want to share what the project is producing and what we are learning, either way in the adaptation mission, but also on the city's mission, because the city's mission is also progressing towards integrating adaptation aspects. the scientific community, of course, because we will try to shed some light on methods to evaluate socioeconomic sustainability of the insurance system against climate events in the short, medium, and long term. And of course, also international organizations like enabling local regions and communities to modernize and update lighthouse and tailor insurance products. And I think here is also very important that we will try to open an avenue, even with a new office for 2030 agenda of the UN for local governance levels. The structure of the project is very simple. It has the core is based on the pilots because we want to base all in the possibility to test and confront the realities. And then we have three main components around, which one is data. And we already said before, it's extremely important to have access to data. And this data has to be usable by the ones that need them to address or to provide the solutions, which in many ways cover all the target groups that you saw before. Another element is the insurance products and the pricing, and the third element is the policy and governance, because we think this is enablers that need to be there. And without these three elements, we think it's very difficult to progress. And that involves, of course, the science, the insurance sector, but also the regions and communities. And all this has to be done in co-creation around the pilots. So we have pilots, and you have here an illustration of where the pilots are, and you see that we have covering quite a good range of regions from the north to the south, also from the east to the west. And there we have pilots in Germany, Norway, in Spain, in Greece, in Bulgaria, and in Croatia. And we also are covering quite sort of main hazards, from storms and floods to droughts, landslides, fires, and so on. And all the pilots are also trying to test some solutions in terms of what is the insurance product or insurance approach. So the project covers also some sectors from urban, agriculture sector, fundamentally, but also sometimes on forest interfaces. And just in a very simple way, and I'm sure Raymond will be doing this much better than me, but in essence, what we try to find is innovative insurance solutions that can be tested from this type of, from Nielsen to behavioral, mutualized systems, parametric insurance, natural-based solutions, or even public infrastructure. So this will be, very granular at the end. We are developing a radar of solutions that is progressing quite well at the moment, that is led by the group of Raymond, which is here. But today we're focusing on work package 4, which is this enabler environments, these policy and governance issues. And here what we aim basically is to support, inform, provide a basis for the adoption of these multi-level and polycentric governance approaches that will enable the solutions to be effective. And this is an interface between climate change adaptation and insurance to enable this deployment of the innovation. And this is looking at local, regional, national, and EU international level. And today, what we're tackling basically is the framework or the framing at the EU level, let's say. And here, what we aim is basically to identify the barriers and drivers, and also collect data on practical guides, recommendations, best practices, and driving from other work packages. So here, the connection with work package 1 is also fundamental. And as you will see, we have these 4 tasks, and one is taking into account these distributional potential issues, which is just transitions on climate resilience. You know that there is a lot of discourse now about just transitions for mitigation, but we think that it's very important also to take this concept of justice and fair in the adaptation and in the resilience components. Another area of this work package of task is to force or to portray alliances on climate change adaptation, but also to enable and to contact and to make this integration and link potential stakeholders. And what is the subject of today, which is this climate resilience dialogues, a series of dialogues. And looking at this, I mean, what we aim is to have this series of dialogues on where we have insurance, society, climate resilience dialogue that will be centralized also on Work Package 1. So today we're as I said, framing the EU aspects or more regional, supra-regional aspects, but at the very, very core of this task is to really do these dialogues also on the pilots. And here the guiding general questions that are going to be adapted for each of the dialogues are around, I mean, how will be best to facilitate the allocation of substantial additional national and regional budgets to increase the penetration of the insurance, because we understand that the public budgets are also critical on facilitating, but also the regulation. What are the main issues, barriers, opportunities to ensure affordable insurance cover, and what are the specific to region enabling elements that you find? And this last question has a lot to be with the actual regulations that are cascading down from the European legislation to the regional and even local or municipal regulations. So just starting with the topic of today, as I said, we will aim to share this latest innovation addressing the climate protection gap as one of the core issues, and exploring these innovative solutions and discussing what are the policy options to enable them. At this first session, we delve into the critical topic of bridging the protection gap and the pivotal role of insurance sectors at the European level, let's say, or what have been the findings of the recent European level climate resilient dialogues. The report has been published very few weeks ago, and we will have a talk that will summarize that for us. The European Commission will illustrate us. Magdalena, thank you very much for being here with us today, and also we will have also an introduction of the climate protection gap by a representative of EIOPA. So Maria, thank you very much for being with us today. And as I said, the future sessions will cover additional topics that will go from public to private collaboration, risk assessment, and risk reduction, and other topics that could be identified. So I think this is all on my side. Sorry for that. And I will like to give the floor to the first presenter, which is Magdalena Bos-Lewandowska. She's a policy officer at the DG CLIMA in the European Commission, and she's been deeply engaged in the climate resilient dialogues of the Commission. So Magdalena, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Maria Jose, and thank you very much for the invitation. It's really, I will try to start showing my presentation. It is really an excellent opportunity for us to present what has been done on the EU level. I mean, the climate resilience dialogues, as you present them, are actually one of the very operational and very good ways of putting what we have done so far into life. I am Magdalena Bos-Lewandowska. I work in the European Commission in the unit Adaptation and Resilience to Climate Change, and also, as already mentioned very rightly by Maria Jose, indeed the adaptation might have been over past years a bit in less focus than mitigation. However, for now it is obvious that the effects of climate change are there, and they will be there for foreseeable future. For the climate change that and the global warming that occurred will have effects on the climate and on the weather and what we can do about it. So the focus recently, what we like to say in the European Commission, that of course we deal with adaptation, but we also are very involved and engaged into building the resilience, which we see a bit more proactive and active way of preparing ourselves for the climate change and its effects. Why did we start the climate resilience dialogue? It all starts with the financial cost of climate change. Obviously, the extreme climate events are becoming more frequent and more intense. and they also bring a financial cost. I mean, every time I give a similar presentation, I unfortunately have new examples of the weather events that actually cost a lot of damage. On your right-hand side, you can see basically from 2 weeks ago, the picture from the floodings that hit southern Poland. This is the town of Głuchołazy. And the mayor of the town says that the reconstruction and dealing with the effects of the flooding will take more or less 7 years. So it is not only the financial cost, but it's also the time, the effort that the community needs to take. And this is the kind of event that also affects the entire community, the entire area, and everyone is, focused on rebuilding and reconstruction and basically getting their lives back. So there is a financial cost, but we also need to remember that the entire community is affected, and it has not only financial, but also the health impacts and bigger economic impacts. When we talk about these extreme events, we very often focus on flooding because they are very illustrative, but actually the biggest contributor to the financial cost, the economic cost of weather events are severe thunderstorms. This means that basically every one of us and each community can be affected by such event, and unfortunately we also have over past week examples in France and Spain that also causes damage. So this is a big financial cost. It is the natural catastrophes losses are estimated to be more than 280 billion in 2023. So this is more or less the gross domestic product of a country such as Greece. Here, when we look at the map of Europe, these economic losses are obviously not distributed evenly across the EU countries. There are some that are more affected, but with the weather events that are expected to more frequent and more intense, they will also be having heavy impacts on the economy. Why we started talking about the climate protection gap and the insurance, it's because the insurance can help to recover from disasters. And the way the European Commission sees the adaptation and building climate resilience is basically building the ability to recover from such events, recover relatively quickly, and continue to thrive for the community and for a country as a whole. So now, obviously, you have one question in your mind: what is the EU doing to address the issue? If we know all this, the process has started in 2021 when the EU announced its adaptation strategy. The adaptation strategy had 3 main pillars. The adaptation needs to be smarter, which means that we need to have it more to push the barriers of knowledge. We need to have more and better data to know what's working and what's not working, but also to be able to address in a very punctual way the issues that are there. Also, it has the adaptation needs to be faster. It needs to be done in quicker and more comprehensive way. And it needs to be more systemic. All levels of the society need to be involved, and also the adaptation needs to occur across all sectors of the economy. And when I'm talking about these objectives of the adaptation strategy, I think they were very well also reflected in the objectives of the Soteria project that Maria Jose presented at the very beginning. And one of the actions included in the adaptation strategy was closing the climate protection gap. So making sure that the share of uninsured losses in total losses from extreme weather events is getting smaller and smaller. One of these actions to take to make sure that this climate protection gap is closing, the Commission decided to strengthen and to organize a dialogue between insurers, policymakers, and other stakeholders. And a very concrete action was organizing the climate resilience dialogue. This dialogue was organized by the Commission, but the Commission was not a participant of the dialogue. We were just enabling other stakeholders organizing the meetings and making sure that they have all they need to discuss between themselves how to address the issue. Starting with the objectives of the climate resilience dialogue. So what it was, the main objectives, I mean, there were many more detailed objectives, but they can be grouped. It's like how to explore how to lower the losses from climate-related disasters. When we think about the climate protection gap in the adaptation unit, of course, we understand that it is the share of uninsured losses. So basically, two ways how you can address it is either to increase the insurance penetration or lower the overall losses. And our thinking is that the best way to do it is to make sure that the economic losses from climate-related disasters are as low as possible. We unfortunately cannot avoid some of these events, but we can manage and prepare for them, and in this way to lower our exposure and also our economic exposure to them. The other objective was to discuss the role of insurance industry in climate adaptation. I think that there is this common thinking that the insurance is there to insure, but also from our point of view, insurance has a lot of experience in risk management. They know the risk, they know where they happen, how to address them, and we thought that it is good to have also insurance industry and maybe also to widen their role in climate adaptation. And overall, the objective was to find solutions that would lower the share of uninsured losses from climate events. So we also wanted the stakeholders to discuss how to, in an innovative way, to increase the insurance and maybe think about the insurance products, how they could be better adapted to the new climate reality. Who was participating in the climate resilience dialogue? We had 4 main groups of stakeholders: insurers and reinsurers, risk managers, public authorities and regions, consumers, and real economy. You can see here the logos of participating organizations. We decided to invite the EU-level associations in order to avoid picking from the geographic point of view or maybe one of the representatives. But this way, it allowed us to have as wide expertise around the table as possible. Some organizations were inviting different participants, different people to different topics, and some of them had actually several people participating, which meant that we could really tap the best expertise and have it wide and very well adapted to the discussed topics. It was also important for us to have representatives of consumers, real economy, but also public authorities and regions, because the adaptation and climate resilience are very local. And there are several levels of responsibilities and leaders that could deal with it. And then why was it a dialogue? As I said, the Commission was not participating, we were just organizing the meetings. But our approach was that the climate change and its effects, it's a common problem, and that it needs solutions that would work for everyone. So we wanted to avoid to have one-sided, one point of view, like only insurance or only maybe local authorities, that sometimes can be the same, but very often are completely different. And we thought that it's good to bring to the table people who are affected by the same problem, sometimes do not talk, but give them an opportunity to exchange, to present their points of views, their problems, their possible solutions, how they deal with this, and to have a good and informed dialogue in the situation where there is first no crisis, second, nobody is a seller, nobody is a buyer. So it was a very good thing to have everyone at the same position, everyone equally important. And we found it that also because it was 2 years, from my perspective, it was good to see how the participants were getting to know each other, getting to also know each other's problems and each other's points of view. And I thought that the discussion was really developing in a good way and bringing more insight and also bringing people together. So that was our insight from the dialogue, and just, as a testament of how good we thought, we are organizing other dialogues with other stakeholders on a very concrete topic with a limited timeline. So everyone is focused on looking the solutions for the issue that is on the table. The Climate Resilience Dialogue published its findings in the final report. The final report was published end of July. You can find it on the website. It is there, and it might be a long and very technical read, but I think it's very informative and gives you a very good and comprehensive overview of the drivers of the climate protection gap, both from the demand and supply side, but also then the possible solutions that could be put in place and could be agreed. I mean, the first driver and the dialogue started from the risk awareness, and the risk awareness in several ways. So what is the risk perception? So some people can be aware that there are risks, but they think that they're not affected. Let me go back to the example of severe thunderstorms. I mean, you may think I don't live close to the river or not close to the sea, so I have low risk of flooding. However, the thunderstorm can cause a flash flood, and you may be flooded. So this is this perception, but also the risk knowledge, and there are different levels of knowledge, different levels of interest, and sometimes just people don't know. And there is also cultural factors. From some participants, we heard that in country X there is simply no culture of insurance. People have all the available information, but they still don't buy insurance. From the other side, we also the dialogue also discussed the contract design, the policy wording, and exclusions, and that was basically about how long how complicated are the contracts, difficult to understand. Sometimes it's not very easy to understand what is actually covered by the policy, what is not covered. Sometimes people think that they are covered, but actually it seems that there is somewhere an exclusion that for climate-related events that doesn't apply. The next topic was risk assessment. So what is the knowledge, what is the data, and how can everyone assess their own risk exposure? Another was affordability. So this goes to the price and also how accessible the insurance is. So what's the information about the insurance and how easy it is to buy it? And another topic was risk reduction. So basically how everyone at each level can reduce the risk of losses from climate-related disasters. There is a big section in the report on proposed solutions, because the dialogue not only talked about the problems and the drivers, but also was trying to agree on the solutions that could be applied. So again, there are big blocks, and I just want to highlight some. So it was very important to have accessible, clear, and easily understandable information on the risks. This is also what Maria Jose mentioned about the data. The data needs to be usable in a form and shape that can be easily applicable for decision-making at all levels. There is also a need for more and better information on how to reduce risks. And this information information needs to be tailor-made depending on the geographic location, knowledge, and the response capacity, because not everyone can address the risks in the way that will be necessary. There is a different response capacity of the regional authority, of the public authority, but there is also different response capacity of a consumer. There is a blog that calls for simpler and clearer insurance products. So again, this wording and information on what's covered and what's not covered should be clearer and more digestible for, in particular, consumers, but also SMEs. And the last is building climate resilience. So again, going to the concept of most importantly, reducing the risk. It is not the issue to only insure it. Insurance is very important, but the best and most important way is to reduce the risks. There is also in the report an entire section about so the solutions, but the solutions and the proposed actions, they are grouped by different groups of stakeholders. So they can be implemented by public authorities, insurance supervisors, consumers, and the insurance industry. And these actions are grouped there. If you are interested, I can only recommend, because it's a very good read. The actions will promote the risk awareness, preparedness, and proactive measures in the face of climate change. And for me, the main message, and actually, which will now have a lot of bearing for the future actions of the Commission in terms of adaptation, is that the different actions can be undertaken by different participants. But the most important thing is the buy-in and coordinated efforts of other groups. This is essential. So exchange of information, the dialogue, looking for solutions together. This is what we see, that the climate resilience needs to be built organically. It cannot be always addressed only by insurance, by the regulation and top-down solutions. How it needs to be actually implemented by everyone at all projects, so it cannot be just an add-in or an afterthought. It needs to be, climate resilience needs to be at the core of all projects and all the actions. Thank you very much. That's the end of my presentation, and I'll be very happy to answer the questions.
Great, thank you so much, Magdalena. Very interesting presentation, and we see like it's a year-long efforts that European Commission has made regarding the promotion of the climate resilient dialogues. And for the audience, please feel free to read the final report of the climate resilient dialogues. It's a very interesting report. You will for sure learn a lot on this topic from the report. And also thank you for the sharing, Magdalena. I actually have a small question for you from the presentation. I think it like as what you summarized in the end, it is a coordinated efforts from all partners. But how did you, as a secretariat or even at the European Commission, how did you manage to engage so many various stakeholders and kind of bring them to the table, create this platform and take them to the table and start discussing this issue? We know like the awareness of the climate resilience, the climate risks may vary across different sectors.
Thank you very much, Vivian. Very good question, but also with an easy answer. It was actually very easy to involve everyone. We simply sent out invitations, and it was obvious that for everyone, it is such a big problem and such an important central problem that everyone wanted to be involved. Of course, at the beginning, there was a bit, because we are the European Commission, so there is always a suspicion that we are asking for opinions just to regulate. But when we explained how the group is organized and that we are just there to facilitate, just to bring people to the table, we don't want to rein on this, just, to make sure that everyone is there and that everyone has equal voice. I think that from that moment on, the discussion really became very rich. But again, we just really sent the invitations. There was nobody who refused, which again shows how big the problem is and how central to everyone's actions.
Interesting. Thank you very much. I think Maria Jose would like to ask a question.
Yeah, well, first to congratulate, for the results, because I think the report is effectively very, very comprehensive. I mean, chapter 5 provides a long list of potential solutions that, is a good food for thought for everyone. My question to you, Magdalena, is now you engage them. We all know, and you also mentioned that the multi-level governance and the polycentric governance is extremely key also, not only the finance. And so how the Commission is thinking on keeping this, this alive and providing this broader context of engaging into ensuring that this, the multi-level governance will work synergistically. Because when we are working with the local authorities, with the regional maybe is a little bit easier, but when you just go down to local, and then of course, it's very important for them to understand and to have very simple approaches, and also to work with the ones they trust. And usually they don't trust some large institutions or agents on finance that they are not familiar with. So, I mean, how the Commission is thinking that this work could continue and ensure that we keep these connections and enhance these connections properly.
Thank you. Thank you for the congratulations on the report, but the congratulations all should go to the stakeholders who took part, and they were really putting this report together. We were just making sure that it has all the pages and that it should. As what we are going to do next. First, at the level of the Commission, of course, we are going to analyze very closely the results of the dialogue and the findings, the proposed actions, because there are also proposed actions for the EU national authorities. And of course, we are going to look at it and see what we as the EU level can do and on which we can work with the member states. How to engage on the multi-level level. You mentioned also in your presentation the EU missions. So there is this EU mission on adaptation, which is a community of regional authorities. It's community of practice. So the mission will be also trying to introduce some of the solutions and then share the results so they can be shared by the others. So we will be trying to work also with the regional authorities and maybe coordinate a little bit the efforts and then to ensure the exchange of experience and exchange of the results.
Great, thank you so much, Magdalena. I'm just asking in the chat if any participant has any questions. If you would like to learn from Magdalena also regarding her presentation just now, or the related topics, we welcome your questions. And I think I also read the recent release that the European Commission is laying out the strategy for the next tenure of the Commission. Would you like to share a few words on that as well?
Yes, I mean, again, this was the dialogue of the stakeholders, but we were there and we were keeping our ears and eyes open. And of course, for the European Commission, it was a unique opportunity to hear from people on the ground what are the problems and what could be the solutions. And obviously, this will also inform the next actions of the Commission. There is the Commission President already announced that there will be a European Union adaptation plan, and we will be also, these findings will be also informing the actions that will be included in this plan. We will be working closely with the member states. For the next mandate of the Commission, climate resilience is very high on the agenda, and it is very high in the programs of many commissioners around. Many commissioners. It's not only a climate issue. It is considered to be economics, competitiveness, preparedness issue, and it is also, when we are talking about the agriculture, it's everywhere. So this will be informing all the actions in terms of the preparedness, but also in terms of the solutions. So in the next 5 years, we actually expect many, many more actions on building climate resilience. Thank you.
Very interesting. That's we got a small teaser of what's coming in the next 5 years. Maria Jose, would you like to share a few words on this? Like your institute has also been doing a lot of work on this topic. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think it's for us is the Soteria project. Indeed, they still all what we think is very fundamental elements. And of course, the entry point is to engage insurance sector, but this is just one part of what we need. I mean, I guess one of the things that we found very interesting in these last years is that sometimes it is important also to see not the resilience in isolation, but as one of the elements of the transition as a whole that the countries are aiming. And in that regard, aligning policies is critical. And aligning climate policies is critical, meaning adaptation and mitigation has to go hand by hand. And we are discovering, for example, that some of the new business models for mitigation are also extremely vulnerable to climate change. So I guess also in Soteria, what we are seeing, at least in the pilot where we are more engaged in my institute, is that the industry is more and more aware of the risk. And therefore they are sometimes, in the past they were reluctant to sit and talk about climate change, and adaptation was not a priority, but now it's becoming a very important issue. So I think what you mentioned, Magdalena, that is key for competitiveness, which is one of the axes of what the new commission wants to promote. Also, it is extremely important. And then the other thing we found is that, of course, it is locally driven in many cases, but it is also very important to nest this locally driven adaptation in a joint stakeholders vision on how they would like to develop in the territories. So it's not only a small city or a city, but it's also the peri-urban areas, it's also the watershed where they are, and so on. So it's a lot of connections across scales. And for that, data is critical, and interoperable data is critical as well. So that's another big problem. We mentioned data, but we have more data than ever in our history, but I guess we are less capable to use the data than ever because many of these data cannot be properly connected or is not accessible. So I think those elements are fundamental. And although when we were writing the project, we thought they were critical, while deploying the project, we think they are even more critical. So data enabling environments through governance and taking into account also soft governance, not only the formal governance. It will be very important to materialize more resilient societies and different scales in Europe. And also we think it's good to learn from other countries beyond Europe, because they are being forced to adapt earlier than us, probably. So I think that's also very interesting. And I also wonder, Magdalena, if the Commission is also establishing some sort of exchange with other regions beyond Europe on that.
Thank you very much. Just on your last point, yes, indeed. I mean, I mentioned the adaptation strategy, but also one of the very important points in the adaptation strategy was to stepping international action. So, of course, we are in contact with the international partners regularly, and we are discussing exactly the importance of climate resilience and also the adaptation solutions that they're applying. I mean, the adaptation solutions on the ground, that some of them are replicable, some are not replicable, but also what you say about the data. We see the importance of the data kind of prepared in a, like, filtered and prepared in a operationable way, because as you say, there is a lot of data, but nobody, I mean, most people don't really know what to do about it and how we can join it. I mean, data is also one of the parts of the climate resilience dialogue, and it also talks about the applicable solutions such as flood maps and other accessible data in a very illustrative and digestible way. So it is really all being consulted and discussed, and we are hoping that, I cannot speak for the commissioners who will take their own decisions, of course, but I think within a few months you will see many more actions also on the European Commission side. Thank you.
Yeah, we have two questions, I think, in the chat. One, I can take over, Vivian, if you want. One is if it's necessary that the local and regional levels develop also adaptation plans, and if they will be required to do so, and how.
Thank you. Good question. I have an example. I don't have a clear response to this. I know that in Poland, that the cities were required to prepare their own adaptation plans. I think that this is relatively new, so we will see the effects and whether it actually improves the situation a lot within a year or two, maybe 3. At the moment, we are focused on the EU adaptation plan. I think also the adaptation plans for the cities, this is not really the EU competence. This is the competence of the national governments, but we are hoping to show to the national governments how important it is and how it can actually improve their governance, but also to improve the project management in terms of seeing where are the investment needs, and how to prioritize them. I mean, we are talking about this climate resilience solutions, but this also, I mean, on the national, regional level, we know this really boils down to the budget, and that there is the need for the good prioritization where it is most needed or where the impact could be the highest. So I think that in this sense, having local adaptation plans, it's very helpful, but I also understand that it's not an easy process and it also requires resources to prepare it. So I cannot speak for the governments. My own opinion is super useful, but we also see the difficulties for regional authorities.
Yeah, we saw that there is an increased number of regions that are preparing also adaptation strategies and plans, but at the local level, obviously, is more difficult. We have another question here that is related to finance. I mean, are there any plans to introduce a common sustainable finance framework, also at least for big community cities? For example, non-finance reporting, SG indicators. This is linked to the adaptation plans, obviously.
Yeah, personally, I'm not aware of these plans, so cannot really say, unfortunately.
What I know from the Horizon program I can share is that some of the big projects on the adaptation mission, they are starting to sort of provide capacity on how to instrument or how to shape financial plans, but so far I don't think they get to the point where they are operational, let's say. And then I think we have another question here. No, it's just a share. We're working in finance with cities to help them to train their elected and employees on climate and adaptation topics. But this is a struggle because often there is not a priority. Here I can add something. We had discussions with the Spanish national government on the fact that sometimes for the local authorities or for the smaller scales, it is too much to think in terms of one plan for adaptation, one plan for mitigation, one financial plan for adaptation, one for mitigation, and so on. So it is more easier to build upon what they already have. Like, for example, they started with Agenda 21, now they are building on the urban agenda for 2030. So integrating climate elements on those for them is easier than looking on separate tracks. And I guess this is what we all aim, no? We aim to have an integrated approach to climate change and development. And for us, it's a lesson learned that the local level is already looking at, because they need to. They don't have choices on that. So I just wanted to share that, because it's emerging very strongly from the work on the local level. And I think we don't have any more questions, Vivian.
Yeah, so thank you very much for the presentation, Magdalena. Once again, very interesting, and I strongly encourage everyone to read our final report on the climate resilient dialogues published on the European Commission's website. And next, we will invite our second speaker for today, Marie Scholer, the senior expert in climate finance and policy. So she has extensive work experience in reinsurance and insurance sector before, and she has the expertise in natural catastrophe models, and she also worked with very many different organizations and stakeholders. So floor is yours, Marie. Thank you for joining us today again.
Thanks a lot, Vivian, and I will just share my screen. So can you just confirm that you see the presentation?
Yes, we do.
Perfect, thank you. So hello everyone. Indeed, my name is Marie Scholer and I work at EIOPA. So I will talk today about addressing the insurance protection gap. Magdalena has already alluded to this topic before, and of course from our perspective, from EIOPA perspective. So maybe a few words. I don't know if everybody has heard about EIOPA before, but we are a European authority. So we are based in Frankfurt in Germany. And we are really at the heart of the insurance and occupational pension supervision in the EU. So our members are national insurance supervisors, and we work together to ensure that we have a common framework, a common way to supervise insurance companies, reinsurance companies, for example, doing business in Europe. So this means also to ensure then also consumer protection. And at EIOPA, for us, of course, sustainable finance is a key priority. And you can imagine also natural catastrophes, climate change is, of course, a big challenge and a big topic for the reinsurance sector. So today I would like to talk about the insurance protection gap and also how we would like to address it from our perspective. So also coming to very concrete deliverables. But let me set the scene. I think from the data we have been gathering, historical loss data, we were looking, okay, how high were the economic losses and how high were the insured losses. And we can see from 1980 to today approximately that only around 25% of the losses for natural catastrophes were actually insured in Europe. So of course this shows that we have an existing insurance protection gap. And if we think about trends also, I think we all can imagine also with climate change, extreme events increasing, of course this will also impact the potential prices of insurance coverages, so also maybe limiting the possibility for the people to buy insurance coverage, so really the affordability of these products, or also what already happens in different regions, the fact that also for insurers, they will just retrieve their business because the risk is too high to be insured. So this is of course a big concern. What we also still see is that in regions where hazards are increasing, buildings are continued to be built, the exposure is increasing. So of course all of this really affects also the possibility for these risks to be insured. And we as a European supervisor, we are of course, we are paying extremely attention to this issue. So I will start my presentation before coming to more concrete product that we have been working on at EIOPA to talk about a bit our findings. I mean, we have been developing a dashboard to monitor the insurance protection gap in the different European countries for different perils. And I think from that, what we can really see is that the insurance protection gap really varies by type of perils. I mean, in Europe, there are some perils that are historically better insured than others. Typically, if we take windstorms, for example, windstorm is a peril that has been in most European countries well insured, where also the insurance penetration is quite high, and also where there are a lot of products available. Then there are other perils, like floods, earthquake, for example, where we see that the insurance penetration, also the insurance coverage for these perils are much smaller. And so I think it's also very important, of course, to make an analysis by type of perils, because this also the insurance protection gap varies by perils. Then the second dimension we also had a look at is, of course, by different countries. Also, for different countries in Europe, I mean, the way natural catastrophes are insured is extremely diverse. It's really, I mean, also when we discuss with different stakeholders, it really is felt as a national matter. And also you have extremely, I would say, various way to see how these risks should be covered. You have some countries which really feel like, okay, because of the nature of the risk, you need to have a solidarity concept. You maybe need to think about flat premiums. And then you have other countries which says, no, in Europe, no, not at all. This is just another risk. And it's actually just for the private sector to cover this risk. So the views and the way to look at this is extremely diverse. And then also, of course, it means that the resulting insurance protection gap is also extremely different from one country to another. So we really see a bit these two dimensions. On one hand, the type of perils. Of course, different countries will be impacted by different type of perils, but also simply the mechanism on how these countries are insured is extremely diverse in Europe. I mean, when we started to look at monitoring the insurance protection gap, of course, the first element was to look at the hazard. What is the intensity, frequency of certain perils? I mentioned before, different European countries will be impacted by different type of hazards. And then also often what we could see in some communications where if you would just use, this ratio of how much is insured compared to the total economic loss. Sometimes you also need to see actually, okay, what is the underlying hazard? Because maybe there is not so many losses that are insured, but maybe the loss is actually very small because the hazard is just not very relevant. So I think these are also discussions that we wanted to have. So first, it's very important, okay, to understand what is the corresponding hazard. The second element is, of course, the exposure. And I think this is a topic that we discuss quite a lot because obviously if you don't have exposure in high hazard zones, then your relating risk will be very low. So also for us, we have a lot of discussions also with insurance sector about the localization of the exposure, about where houses are built along coast. Yes, it's nice, but so these are really very important discussions because we also had an analysis. You might have seen these graphs, typical graph from Munich Re, where you see the economic losses, insured losses increasing over time. And many times the narrative is also about, okay, climate change and weather events and so on. Yes, but also the main driving factor is also the fact that actually there is expensive exposure in high hazard regions, and this has to change. And of course, I think what we also need to address is, on one hand, where we want to build, and this I think we definitely need to do better. And second is also on the vulnerability. So how the houses are built, which is material, there are building codes available. We can also adapt existing houses. So I think all these discussions need to take place. We see them more and more prominent, as also mentioned in the previous presentation. And I think this is a key element ultimately on the resulting risk, resulting losses, and also the resulting insurance protection gap. And of course, you cannot talk about the insurance protection gap without talking about the insurance coverage. So I already hinted, this is extremely diverse in Europe. We see in some countries public-private partnerships. In some other countries, it is not possible to talk about a public-private partnership, if I may show a bit the two extremes. And what we also see now, that there are more and more initiatives in different European countries. I mean, we are, as I mentioned, our members are national insurance supervisors, and many countries have picked this topic to also discuss, okay, is there the need to have new public-private partnerships? I mean, we see also just the recent example of Italy, where things are changing, where there are more discussion about mandatory insurance. There are more discussion about what is the role of the state. I mean, should there be a government backstop and so on. So we really see all these topic discussion happening. And I think from us, from a European perspective, of course, what we also see and where we would like to maybe also think about is that each country is looking at it from a very national perspective, but natural catastrophes, they don't know borders. So you have many events that actually are across borders. So the way European citizens will maybe experience an event will be extremely different if you live on one side of the border or the other. Is this okay? And second is also that the solutions that are put in place at national level, they're extremely diverse. The way to address it, the perils that are going to be covered, is it a government backstop? What is the role of the private sector? What is it a public insure, public reinsure? So it's extremely diverse. Many different solutions are developed, and of course, I think it's from us, from a European perspective, we would like also the European citizens to have a similar experience when something happens, simply that we can ensure that people will be able to recover after the event. So I think that's really a bit the analysis that we have done so far. And now I would like to come a bit more concretely to different work that we have been doing at EIOPA, and how we think, from our perspective, we want to address the insurance protection gap for natural catastrophes in Europe. The first pillar, and I think you could get it also from the slides I just presented before, is really we started to want to understand the issue, because when we started this topic, we were discussing with different stakeholders. Everybody has a view on the issue, depending also if you come from the insurance sector, maybe your European Commission, municipalities. I mean, everybody has a feeling about it. But what we thought is also important to have a common ground. Let's have a dashboard to talk in a similar way, to try to measure it in a similar way with similar data, different countries, different perils, and the same methodology. So at least that we can compare a bit. And I think that's a bit our first pillar, to understand, and for that a dashboard and access to data and to model. I will come back to that. The second pillar, where we also completely agree with the previous presentation, is, you know, when we were discussing at the beginning, how to address a protection gap, insurance protection gap, many people are just saying, well, let's just increase insurance penetration. but this is not going to be sustainable. And this is really something clearly that we recognize. And so we really want the discussion on solution to, yes, talk about insurance penetration and increase it, but we want to make it also central to think what can we and the insurance sector, reinsurance sector do to actually help to adapt, to mitigate the risks. And I think that's really why it is my second pillar here. The third one, of course, we talk about insurance coverage. So also there are big things to do. And also I will talk a bit about what we have done from a demand side perspective. And the last pillar, which we believe is also of importance, is of course, we have a big problem. And also the trends are not good. So at some point, there will be the need to also think, okay, how can we share more the risks? Who are the different stakeholders that can help to maybe have a more layered approach? Of course, we see the private insurance and reinsurance sector to be the first line of defense, but maybe there are also different actors that we need to come because we are facing such a big issue. So I mentioned already also the findings I was describing before. These are coming from our dashboard. You have also the link on the slide. We wanted to have for the different European countries, for different perils, we cover 5 different perils, a common methodology and using to the extent possible common data. And we got a lot also of information from our national insurance supervisor. We have also at EIOPA an external network on catastrophe risk, so where we have experts that are on catastrophe that are joining from the industry, for example, also from model providers and so on. So we have built that to try to have a common view. Of course, this brings challenges because information availability for one peril is very different to another, or also from one country to another. And this dashboard, we are reviewing it yearly, so we will also publish a light update by end of the year to always ensure that the information is up to date, because we, as I mentioned, we see a lot of dynamism now. We see a lot of countries discussing this topic and taking actions. So we need to monitor that. And we also have agreement to do a more thorough review every 5 years to completely review during 2 years the methodology, the input data, and to see what we can also add to improve the dashboard. So this is the first concrete deliverable that we have done. Then what I mentioned also is that when you want to understand, when we developed the dashboard, and also for other supervisory activities, we need models. And for us, we work closely with the insurance sector. The insurance sector is used to use catastrophe models, for example, but many of them are actually commercial models. So you always have issues with intellectual properties, and also, of course, to share data and information. This has some limitations. So what we also wanted to do is to explore a bit what is available open source. So to also see, okay, maybe there are also universities that are developing these type of models. Could we also, as a supervisor, use it, make use of it, and so on. So that's why we have here showing also the link to the work we have done to create a user interface. So we use the CLIMA app. CLIMA is a catastrophe platform developed by a university in Zurich, the ETH, and we created a user interface. Why? Because, of course, also sometimes these models that might be developed by universities, they are nice, but also for our stakeholders, also national supervisors, we wanted to create something where they can start to play. They can start to see, okay, what type of input data do I need? Which information do I need to provide to be able to do an analysis on natural catastrophe risks and also climate change. So to choose a scenario, to choose a time horizon. So we really use this project for educational purposes. And now in October, we will also, for example, use this to provide training to European supervisor on natural catastrophe. This is accessible on our website. And of course, it's not limited just for supervisors. So yeah, we also know other NGOs or people who are looking into what we have developed, the user interface, to also continue developing it. And I think that's, of course, open to anybody joining the call as well. Data. I don't think we can talk about this topic, of course, without talking about any data. Also for us, when we have developed the dashboard, we were of need of specific data. As I said, we wanted to have common source for all European countries for different perils. And this is not easy. I mean, there are some countries, maybe they have already developed some framework to share some data, but then there are, and for some perils, and then there are others where this is not the case. So also there, we think that from our perspective, we want to improve the understanding related to historical insured loss data. We have published here a pilot, so we named it the Catastrophe Data Hub. So this was based on ad hoc data collection we have done to the insurance sector for some selected events to actually see, okay, what are the insured losses. I mean, just to mention, this is just a pilot. This doesn't represent 100% market view, but this was just for us to start in that direction, and we would like to continue with this project to continue to collect this data for new events from the insurance sector, and then also to be able to share it back, to publish it on our website. So this is a project that we have initiated, and we hope to be able to make further progress in the future. Then coming to my second pillar, I think what is important, of course, is to talk about this crucial role also insurers and reinsurers can play to actually help to reduce climate change risks. I mean, typically insurers, they are often talking to policyholders once an event has occurred. And we would like to change that to actually also see more and more reinsurers, insurers to play a more proactive role, also to help provide advice on what can you do to actually reduce also the natural catastrophe risks. So we have called that impact underwriting. So really this role, what can they do to help policyholders to reduce their risks? And of course, for us, I mean, some examples, what are already taking place also in the US, but we also see this coming in Europe, is really to have more the thinking. Well, and I'm sure in the Soteria project, you're also very familiar with this thinking, is the fact that, okay, if you take prevention measures, you can also see a reduction on the risk-based premium. And this is definitely something that we would like to see happen more. And I will also say a few words about our next projects we will do also to continue to promote and push for this type of behavior. The third pillar to cover, so also there, consumer protection colleague, they have done quite some work to also look at the demand side. Depending on the European country, the insurance penetration is very significantly. In some countries, it is extremely low. And so it is also important to understand why. And this is also the reason for the study. So I also added the link here. And we wanted to better understand, okay, what are the reasons? Why do people tend to not buy natural catastrophe insurance? And of course, it is linked with many reasons. Sometimes people, well, we are maybe too optimistic, but they believe so it will happen to my neighbor, but not to me. or I lived in the house since 10 years and nothing happened. So it's really about this risk awareness, and also about the added value of the insurance product, because of course many also we did a survey, consumer survey, and I think the issue a bit, if we can say, with an insurance product is that you actually need to pay for something you're not sure you will get something. And that a bit is, of course, to also communicate more on the added value of such a product is an important perspective. And I mentioned the last pillar, so the pillar where also to talk about transferring risk. So we at EIOPA, we like to talk about a ladder approach to catastrophe insurance. So I mentioned that we really see the insurance sector to be the first line of defense. Of course, then risks are also transferred to reinsurers, for example. We also see in different countries public-private partnerships schemes in place. And then what we also recognize is the need to discuss also at a potential European layer. And we are working together with the ECB on this. We have already published a paper last year, and we are continuing to work on the topic to see really what would be the benefit and what would be key requirements. And I think for us also, when we want to discuss about these different layers, always also the need to have adaptation at the core of any of these layers is of key importance, because of the reasons that I said before, because we don't think that just insuring and having, for example, mandatory insurance will be the solution. We actually need to do something first about reducing the risks. So to finish for today, I mean, there is a significant protection gap in Europe today for natural catastrophes, and the trends tell us that if we do nothing, this will just widen further. So EIOPA's work is based on 4 pillars: to understand, mitigate, cover, and transfer. And what is next? So from all the information I provided you in the previous slides, we also are continuing to develop new work, new products. One of them is about how to increase risk awareness and understanding of prevention measures. Because we, from all the different works that we have done, from all the different presentations we have made, I think this was really a recurring topic and something to give more thought about. And for that, we are currently working on what we call a blueprint paper for a tool to raise awareness on risk and prevention measures. This paper, it will be a discussion paper, should be published by end of this year. And we would also very much welcome comments from stakeholders like you on this paper. So I would really really enjoy if you wouldn't mind looking at the paper, reading it, and also providing us your feedback, because I think this is a very concrete task that we are currently looking at. We have also been analyzing existing tools, so we were looking at 66 tools worldwide. There are many tools available already, and we looked at different features. We also looked at the visualization, how to pass on messages. We will also do a consumer survey, but we also want to conduct discussions about how to make these tools more popular, because we see, okay, there are now all these existing tools, but we discussed with many tool owners, and none of these tools really has reached a high level of popularity. So I think these are all these different discussions we want to have in this paper. The second bullet is, of course, what I hinted already before, is the need to improve the collection and sharing of catastrophe-related data. And one concrete action here is, for example, for EIOPA to collect insured losses from an event, and then to also make it available at a certain level of aggregation. So this is work in progress, and yeah, we have this pilot, this CAT data, CAT hub that we have already published, and we hope to be able to improve that in the future. And the last part, which we also believe is important. So on one hand, we want for the consumer to know more about the risk and also related prevention measures, whether it's things you can do on your house, also related to insurance. But then we also want to take the problem from the insurance perspective and also look into capital requirement and what could be dedicated treatment in adaptation measures in the non-life insurance capital requirement. So this is a work that we will start by end of the year, and I believe will keep us busy for quite some time. So thanks a lot for your attention, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Marie. Very interesting sharing on the work at your work at the EIOPA and the directions like you're considering at the moment. Maybe a short question on the impact underwriting you mentioned. I think this is the very innovative approach to kind of encourage insurers to be more proactive and encourage consumers to take preventative measures. So, but we also understand like there are a lot of difficulties to carry out this kind of impact underwriting, especially for resilience. There might be some quantifying difficulties, like how to measure these effects and how to like, especially the social benefits or health benefits. Could you please share a bit more on that?
Yes, no, definitely. I mean, when we started to work on this concept, which a priori is quite simple and makes a lot of sense. Of course, we from EIOPA's perspective, we see first of all that the premiums should be risk-based, because this also gives a message to the policyholder. Because otherwise, if at some point you will have to pay your risk, I mean, in one way or the other. So that's where our starting point. And of course, if you take prevention measures, what about reducing the premium? Then the first issue is, of course, that in non-life insurance, you have most of the time 1-year contracts. And after 1 year, you can, I mean, the premium can be repriced and so on. So you have this short-term relationship between the policyholder and the insurer. And if you take prevention measures, maybe you need to invest, and maybe you will need to pay this for multiple years. And also, are you sure? I mean, let's assume an insurer is okay for the first year to reduce your premium, but as it's repriced annually, maybe the policyholder is not sure that these good conditions will stay over time. So this is a typical barrier, I would say, where we already started to have some discussions. Of course, there are also other elements that I mean we discussed a bit. We looked at pros and cons of maybe more long-term Nat Cat insurance coverage, or at least to also have a bit these possibilities. There also, then of course we got also from our consumer protection colleagues that in a way also for the consumer it's good to have this short term, because then they can also move away from this contract. So there are all these different aspects. Of course, no problem is that easy. Different parameters to take into account, but yes, so that would be, for example, one of them, this short term relationship between a policyholder and the insurer. And you also hinted then also how to quantify the impact of this adaptation. I mean, we work a lot with commercial model provider. We see really that this topic has picked up at their end, because also the industry and the supervisory community is putting more. So also automatically the model provider, they also are doing quite a lot, but it's not an easy topic. And also if you take one model, it will tell you like this, and then the next one will give you another story. So I think this is definitely something where we need to continue to better understand the modeling, also linking with building codes, and also to make sure that these are properly reflected. Of course, if you think about also, this requires quite a lot of additional data to be able to take that into account. You need to know, okay, well, what is the construction type, how it has been built, and so on. So it needs a lot of additional data also to be shared with the insurer. And so I think for bigger insurers, okay, this is already a hopefully common practice, maybe for smaller ones less, depends on the type of business, of course. But yeah, so there are a lot of new dimensions that need to be defined, but I think it's the discussion is there. It is a continuous one, and we see quite a huge interest on this. Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much for your reply. I think, we got a question for you in the chat. Can you please explain more on the last point of your interesting presentation, how the risk prevention measures in non-life experience could be implemented and how they will be incorporated in capital requirements? And apart from the discussion paper, very much needed. Is the new regulation already under development?
Mm-hmm. So, and of course, this is work that we will start by end of the year, but I can already give some preliminary thinking we had on this topic. So we had already, so in the capital requirement, I mean, there are different modules where we are asking, where companies have to calculate the required capital requirements. So here, what we could think about, I mean, there is a module for natural catastrophe risks. So basically, where they have to calculate how much risks they have and how much capital is needed to cover these risks. So when we do that, for example, we use what we call a standard formula. So we calibrate parameters, and we do that with an average portfolio. So we take data from model providers who are, for example, preparing some exposure data from insurance companies in a country. But it's a bit, we can see it as an average. Now, and from this, we model then the loss ratio that every company has to apply to calculate the capital requirement. Now, we can think that there are maybe some companies that do better than the average. And if they do better, maybe we should actually think at how to reflect that, because this is going the right direction. Maybe, of course, now with that, maybe all companies will become excellent, and then it will not be needed to reflect any difference anymore between different companies. But that's a bit the thinking, to push a bit to move away from this average behavior to that the best one in class actually would benefit from a lowered capital requirement. But yes, I think this is quite a huge topic. Talking about capital requirement is always quite a challenge. It's very sensitive because it represents money, and but I think it's also a very powerful way to push this discussion and also to push for good practices. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And of course, I mean, with this work, I mean, maybe also just talking about new regulation. So also at EIOPA, I think we are already calibrating the natural catastrophe module for capital requirement. What has changed, where we got now a new mandate, is actually to do that more regularly. So every 5 years, we have to update these parameters because of the new trends and so on. So we need to be a bit more dynamic. The hazard is changing, but also the exposure, vulnerability. And so there we have received a new mandate to do that more frequently. But in that regard, we are now finalizing the opinion for the Commission on that. There, it's more that the capital requirements actually increasing. So with this new work on adaptation, maybe there is a way to lower it in some cases for some insurers who are maybe doing more on adaptation, and then of course maybe this will also enter into law. But okay, this now it's really I'm talking really for the future.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you so much for your reply. I think we got another question in the chat. Can you please say a few words on how the EU taxonomy interconnected with the EU sovereigns regulation?
You can with the EU Solvency, the Solvency II regulation. Okay. I guess it must be Solvency II. Yes. So of course, I mean, if I may say, if I summarize it in one way, the Solvency II regulation is is a lot about the risks. I mean, from an EIOPA perspective, we are a technical agency, so we are always interested in the risks. The EU sustainable finance, the taxonomy is more to actually identify activities that would contribute to climate change adaptation mitigation. So it's, I mean, from our perspective, we are more looking at the risks, so kind of the opposite of the taxonomy, if we can say so, because I mean, also always the message we got from the Commission that the EU taxonomy doesn't tell you anything necessarily of the risk. So we need always to do this additional step to translate whatever is in the taxonomy, to then see also how it actually translates into maybe transition risk, physical risk, and so on. So I think that's a bit the difference. But yes, definitely also in the EU taxonomy, the insurance sector is also, for example, eligible to contribute to climate change adaptation. And I think this links very much with our narrative, also, you know, to recognize this in the capital requirements. So yeah, I think there is a lot of alignment. But yeah, I think also for us, of course, this is work we need to do together with our members. And yes, let's see how this will go.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we have another question in the chat. Are there any intersections between the ESRS standards and the EU Solvency II?
Okay, I think here also, unfortunately, I will need to respond like Magdalena before. I mean, I'm not a specialist on ESRS standards. So I mean, I can also take the name and ask my colleague, but I wouldn't be able to respond here.
Mm-hmm. Or would you like to specify which standard you are talking about, Alexander?
Yeah, just maybe briefly to introduce this question. It's about the standards on sustainability reporting for the companies, so corporate sustainability reporting, because it's about the risks, environmental, social, and governance risks, and how it, let's say, intersects or connects to this EU Solvency II. Maybe you can just provide some update.
Yeah, okay. No, so indeed, also there, EIOPA is actually working now on a new mandate, also that we got from the Commission, to work on what we call it now sustainability risks plan. So it's and this is all, of course, work in progress. So I mean, there will be also a paper that will be published, discussed, and so on. So with the members and so on. So this is something that might also change over time. But the idea is, as you mentioned, okay, there are a lot of different reporting standards that are developed currently, and also to see also if the insurance company they could kind of, you know, all these different reporting, centralize it in a report. And this is what we call this sustainability risk plan. And also to link it with Solvency II, because also in Solvency II, for example, there is the requirement. We have different pillars, and the second pillar is actually also asking companies to look at their own risk and solvency assessment. So also there, we have already in the past asked companies to consider looking into climate change scenarios. So it's about bringing all these different standards maybe into one document, which could be then submitted also to supervisors, so that they have a more holistic view of the risk, of course, climate, but also the other other type of sustainability risk at the same time, which have been maybe less quantified so far.
Thank you very much. And we got another question on the open-end data source. So they cannot be implemented without regulators, and questioning some actions from the sector. So is that right? Like, how do you was that statement correct? And how do you see this in the future, and how it will be implemented?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course, that's a challenging question. It's always, I mean, and of course, that would be also, for example, recognized in the EU taxonomy, that if you want to be eligible, you, for example, have to share data. I mean, companies by themselves, right, have to do that. That could be a way to incentivize that type of behavior. And we have seen also some example in some countries. Mia, I see, is also in the call in Norway, where definitely there are these type of initiatives. Of course, from us, because we as a European authority, I mean, first we are used to collect data from the insurance sector, because to be able to supervise them, we already collect a lot of different type of data related to their balance sheet and so on. So this is something we have a process that we have already in place for any company doing business in Europe. And we also believe that we want to have more homogeneous reporting in Europe, because the problem, what we can see, if we leave it a bit to some companies, well, first, we would not have 100% view of the loss for an event. And second, some countries will be very advanced, and then some other countries will not. But it doesn't mean that the countries who are not advanced, they actually don't have a huge problem with natural catastrophe risk. So as a European authority, we would like to have something more homogeneous and to have common data for all European countries. So that's why, yes, we would push it from the regulatory perspective.
Yeah, and we got a comment. We need to make more new regulations to enable the data sharing, the loss data sharing in insurance, and cope with GDPR, of course.
Yeah.
And I think another question I received is regarding, like, as a European authority, EIOPA, how would you also consider the bottom-up process to collect some practical ideas or good practices from the regions, considering like a lot of our participants today are regions, our local partners?
Yes, no, definitely. I mean, of course, for us, many times when we do a bottom up, it comes from, for example, the insurance companies, right? I mean, we have also done, for example, for impact underwriting, we had also collected practices of what insurance companies are doing, and that was a bit the type of, I mean, typical, channel of information that we have. I mean, from that we were a bit disappointed, because we could see that in Europe we are really not very advanced on the topic for the moment, but we can only improve. But yes, of course, I think one channel is, of course, if the group also is interested in commenting in this blueprint paper, but also we would welcome inputs also from the groups. I think that would be excellent also to continue also for us to develop this work, because